Do you know the origin of a Moi Moi statue at Ikpoba Slope? The location now famously known as Ikpoba Slope was once called Okedo, a site that holds a statue with a historical past, the Moi Moi statue. Before we delve into the statue's origin, let's journey back to the mid-16th century during the reign of Oba Esige, who reigned from 1504 to 1550 AD. At that time, there lived a powerful and influential chief in Benin named Chifolia, known for his pride. Chifolia often sat in the palace amongst his fellow chiefs and repeatedly boasted about his wife, Imagweo. He claimed she was the most beautiful woman alive, faithful beyond questions, and incapable of betraying him. One day in the palace, Obaesige cautioned Chifolia never to place too much trust on a woman's loyalty or never to boast about what the heart of a man or a woman may do. But Chifolia stood his ground and insisted that his wife cannot be unfaithful to him, not even in thought. Amused yet determined, Obaesige decided to test Chifolia's confidence. He summoned one of his palace servants and secretly instructed him to find out what Imagweo, the wife of Chifolia, cherished most. Days later, the servant returned with the answer to Obaesige. She had a deep love for gold and coral beads. The Oba then selected some of the most exquisite royal ornaments and handed them to a physically challenged man, which the Beninese or the Edo people called Uke. Obaesige instructed this man to approach Imagweo and try to win her affection with the royal treasures. Days later, the disabled man called Uke returned with the news to Obaesige that Imagweo had fallen for the treasures and she had given in. After this news got to Obaesige, the news spread all over the kingdom like wildfire. Chifolia was embarrassed and devastated. Obaesige called him and told him, "Didn't I warn you about trusting a woman's loyalty?" Chifolia, with rage and shame, returned home in a blind fury and murdered Imagweo in cold blood by taking off her head from her shoulders. Though Chifolia could not confront the Oba directly, the chief's resentment deepened in secret. He plotted revenge. He sent his trusted servant, Agboviulege, to the powerful Ata of Ida, a neighboring kingdom across the river Niger, with a false message that the Oba of Benin, who was Obaesige at that time, was planning to wage war against Ida. Without delay, the Ata rallied his warriors. The armies of Ida began their march towards Benin, advancing through the village of Aho. Caught off guard, Obaesige was shocked by the sudden attack of Ata of Ida. He could not understand what had provoked the invasion. He immediately summoned his warships, medicine men and warriors, the Benin armies in general. Though unprepared, they were quickly dispatched to defend the land. Queen Idia, who was then the mother of Obaesige, stood by her son. She vowed to protect and stand by him till the end. She was a warrior in her own time. While the warriors were mobilized, Queen Idia quickly went to the guild of Igun and commissioned a powerful statue, the image of a fierce warrior. The sculptors there worked with urgency because this was war. Once completed, this statue was transported towards Aho, which was the battlefield. By the time Queen Idia and her warriors reached the Ikpoba River, which was called Okedo, the Ida warriors already crossed over. Thinking swiftly, Queen Idia planted the statue they were carrying at the hill now known as Ikpoba Hill. As the invading armies approached, they saw this figure or a statue. They panicked and they unleashed all their weapons on this statue, thinking it was a warrior or a man with a supernatural strength. At the moment, Queen Idia's warriors charged, shouting "Mwe, Mwe," meaning catch them, catch them. The name stuck till date. The statue became known as a Mwe Mwe, echoing the war cries of that decisive battle on that very day. The Benin warriors overwhelmed the Igala forces, unaliving many and taking other captives. Some of the captured Igala people settled in Benin and they have descendants here today. This war marked a turning point as echoed on a song by Sir Victor Uwaifo of blessed memory titled Okwida, and the song goes like this. Okwida, 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 Aravene Otogave, Emwe na Mayo Kipoba. This war would continue beyond this battle. Confrontations invited firearms from the Portuguese allies, but that's a story for another day. Note that this is not the history of Benin-Ida War. This is an introduction or the explanation of a Moi Moi statue at Ikpoba Hill. This is not the whole history of the Benin-Ida War or how it ended, but this is the origin of a Moi Moi statue. So don't get it twisted. So next time you pass through Ikpoba Slope, Note that the Emwemwe you see is not just an art, it is a silent warrior, a monument of strategy, sacrifice, betrayal, and triumph. It was Queen Idia's spirit, her brilliance, and the strength of Benin people that gave it life. If this episode of Our Forgotten History touched you, please like, share, and comment. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more living stories from the soul of our heritage.